Chapter 5. Battle in the High Street. Infiltrating the castle. The vault.
Up and at 'em, kid.
There was a sharp knock at the door, and Vincent spoke again.
Dress nice.
Amused, Link shuffled wearily over to the dresser and went through the clothing inside. Although it was tough to discern what was what in the darkness, he soon found a set of pants in a white shirt and black vest that seemed like they belonged on a member of the upper class. He combined this with buckled loafers and a black leather belt.
Your coat,
said Vincent, who was waiting outside his room. The old man was wearing what Link recognized as a guard's uniform. His white hair was hidden by his helmet, but his visor was up and Link could see his face.
Hey. You need a coat. The nobles all wear overcoats when they go outside. I don't have one. Gods damn it. MIDNA. What?
The imp's shrill voice bellowed at them from somewhere inside the tangled spirit temple.
Did you buy this kid a coat? What? Hang on.
After a little while, she poked her head out from around the corner.
The hell does he need a coat for? The nobles all wear coats when they go out, don't you know that? It's not even cold outside. It will be when we get up there. Shut up.
Midna disappeared.
Useless little.
Vincent pulled off his helmet and ran a hand through his hair.
Come on.
Link followed him through the maze-like hallways, until Vincent stopped at a room with heavy clothing hanging on the walls and on coat racks. He shuffled through several overcoats before selecting a sharp black one with gold buttons and tossing it at Link. He put it on. The coat tail flapped about his legs.
What's the deal with this? We're heading up,
Vincent pointed upwards helpfully.
You need to look like a nobleman. Link. Vincent? Ah, there you are, hurry up.
Ganondorf was wearing his flawless set of black and gold armor, Link noticed. The sword on his waist was one that Link had seen hanging on the walls before. It was a long sword as tall as he was that appeared to be made of pure light. Midna, Colin, and Ashe were waiting for them out front. Colin was dressed as a royal guard also, and Ashe was clad in a very elegant-looking skirt and blouse.
Hello there, darling.
She clasped onto Link's arm as soon as she saw him.
Lovely day for a stroll, yeah. Did I miss something?
Vincent and Colin seemed to be chuckling at him.
You and Ashe are married,
Vincent said,
at least for this mission. Colin and myself will be two guards escorting the young couple as you go about your morning business. Business that just happens to be in the royal complex. And what about you?
He noticed that Ganondorf and Midna did not seem to be particularly disguised. Midna herself was wearing the same filmy black garment and bizarre stone headdress she wore every day.
The two of us don't stand a chance of walking in there unrecognized,
Ganondorf explained.
So we will ensure that we are, in fact, recognized and thus provide a convenient distraction. Blow some stuff up while we're at it,
Midna added.
And where are we going?
Vincent pointed again.
I already said. Up.
Down in the lowest levels of the city, the sun was still hidden away behind high walls and towering buildings. It was as dark as night.
It tends to be safer in the early morning,
Ganondorf explained,
but it could still be lurking about. We'll stick together until we get high enough to see daylight, and then it'll be safe to split up.
They climbed flight after flight of stairs, sometimes entering darkened buildings and emerging on rooftops that became other streets. Link was amazed at how intricately the city was woven together, and in the silence and emptiness of the early morning it was almost a work of art. When they crossed bridges and he looked down, he found that he could never see a place where the city ended. There always seemed to be another layer hidden beneath, and gaps in the infrastructure where he could see nothing but darkness. He could tell that there were places, further down below, that sunlight had never seen. He wondered what horrors would lurk in those places. They entered the vast plaza of the market district. It was completely empty, but pink tinges of sunlight could be seen in the space of sky above.
Let's aim to meet back at the Spirit Temple before sunset.
Ganondorf and Midna broke apart from the group.
Vissen, you're in command. Link, that means you are to obey every order he gives you. Understood?
Link nodded.
Good.
He seemed about to add more, but then decided against it.
Right. Good luck, everybody.
The two groups parted, heading in opposite directions. Link looked back and saw Ganondorf and Midna, tiny against the vast spread of buildings and distance of the plaza. The towering Gerudo leader seemed hopelessly small next to the might of the city, and Midna was nothing more than the red and orange shine of her hair as the growing light caught it oddly. Then they disappeared into the maze of the city, and Link followed Vissen, Colin, and Ashe into the streets that spiraled further and further upwards. Midna floated along upside down ahead of Ganondorf, looking back at the stoic man's bearded face with an upside-down grin.
So? You excited?
Ganondorf smiled back.
Somewhat. I suppose it has been a little while since I've gone deliberately out of my way to attract attention. You bet.
She did a little upside-down pirouette in midair, flipping over in a complicated loop-the-loop, coming to rest upright, and bobbing her little head along to an invisible beat.
Let's go. Let's do this. Let's hurt some people.
Her enthusiasm was infectious, much to Ganondorf's chagrin.
Get ready, then. I think today could be your big day.
She stopped punching the air and grinned maliciously.
Tell me about it.
The streets were beginning to fill up with people going about their daily business. Some of them saw the two high-ranking Gerudo walking down the street in what was quickly becoming broad daylight and turned the other way. Others crossed the street, and others still went right back inside. Eventually, someone screamed. It had taken a while. They had passed through the marble and gold of the economic district, in the shadows of banks, and through the immaculate green trees and brightly colored flowers of the more expensive residential streets. But now, at the front of the high street, they had at last been outright pointed out. Civilians scattered, and guards came pouring out from everywhere, saw who exactly they were fighting, and scattered along with the civilians. The two of them walked calmly down the now empty high street. The road climbed at a steady angle, up and up past progressively larger and more ornate buildings, until it reached the gate to the royal complex. It was there that they were stopped at last. A full platoon of soldiers pointed spears at them from behind hastily constructed barricades. In front of the barricades was a purple kid. Vadi.
Can I help you?
He asked. Ganondorf said nothing, but drew his shining sword. Steam rose from the magical blade in the chill morning air.
Get out of my way!
The air seemed to grow colder, and sharper, until it bit at their exposed skin. Vadi rose slightly off the ground.
No.
Behind the barricade, soldiers stood and drew back the strings on their bows.
Where is he?
Midna cracked her knuckles.
Tell me. You there, purple guy. Where is he?
Vadi opened his mouth as if he was about to say something, but then tossed his hand forward in a sharp throwing gesture. This had no immediate visible effect, but then Midna was yanked sharply out of the air to crash into the paved street. The soldiers behind the barricade launched their arrows, every one of them targeted at Ganondorf. He raised a hand, clenched it into a fist, and they shattered into dust that swirled in the now raging winds billowing around Vadi. Midna was just regaining her footing when Ganondorf spotted him.
Behind you!
She turned just in time to duck as tiny black shards of magic hissed overhead. One of them clanked off the top of her helmet, ricocheting and shattering a nearby window in a tinkle of glass. It seemed that everybody could tell that this was a momentous occasion. The soldiers fell into silence and clenched their weapons. Vadi turned and the gusts of wind lessened slightly. Even Ganondorf stopped to see what would happen. Standing in the middle of the high street was Zant, his pale face hidden completely by a gigantic stone helmet that was at least twice as weird and 3 times as large as Midna's.
The last of the Twilight,
he said softly, looking up at her.
Would you care to join your people, O Twilight Princess?
She hovered in the air silently.
I've been waiting for this day for a very long time, Your Highness. Did you know? I told myself that there was something I would only tell you when I was about to kill you. Would you like to hear it now?
By this point, everybody on the battlefield was unabashedly staring at the two facing off in the middle of the high street. Said Vadi.
The Twilight are still alive,
said Zant. Ganondorf couldn't help but notice that Midna's fists were clenched, and her whole body was shaking. He could see the beginnings of powerful magic sparking up and down her arms.
And now I've told you that, I suppose it's time for me to kill you.
With blinding speed, he shattered the road around him and sent razor-sharp chunks of stone flying at Midna. They never had a chance to reach her, the stone melted into slag and spattered, hissing, on the ground. She extended her arms and clenched and unclenched her fists. In a flash, her entire body was engulfed in roiling flames that danced along her outstretched limbs and came to rest in each of her hands, burning with a blinding light and staggering heat.
Let's get lit.
Ganondorf sighed. So unprofessional. Midna was inevitably the action hero of her own bombastic story. He turned lazily and caught a spear that had just been tossed at him from behind the soldier's makeshift barrier, whirling it around and tossing it straight back at the man who had thrown it. His helmet fell off when it hit him, and a man who couldn't have been more than 20 years old looked in horror at the wood and metal weapon that had pierced his armor and embedded itself in his chest. Wasting no time, Ganondorf charged them and Vadi rose up to his eye level to meet him. Compacted air as sharp as any blade sliced at him, designed to sever his head from his shoulders. He brought his longsword up to meet the attack, and the wind dissipated with a crackle of magic against his superior blade.
What in the...
He did not give Vadi another chance, taking 2 quick steps forward, leaping, and punching the wind mage with a gauntlet fist, slamming him into the high street hard enough that he physically bounced. Vadi hit the ground again and barely managed to roll out of the way of Ganondorf's foot crashing into the spot where his head had just been, shattering the stone tile. His eyes were wide and panicked, Ganondorf noted with satisfaction. The two had never fought before, but it was becoming apparent that Vadi was not accustomed to losing and was realizing just what he had gotten himself into. Ganondorf eyed the soldiers and the now furious mage, fairly certain he could hold his own. He knew that Midna would now be fully occupied with exacting her revenge. Behind him, in the center of the high street, Midna was fully occupied with exacting her revenge. She pitched fireball after fireball at Zant, who leapt from side to side erratically, remaining just a hair ahead of the projectiles with each burst. In a flutter of dark magic, he vanished and then reappeared directly behind Midna, moving his right arm sharply in a striking motion. He did not physically hit her, but the magic behind the gesture was potent. Midna bucked to the side in an action reminiscent of being clooped on the side of the head, which was in fact what had just happened. She hit the wall of a nearby building sharply, but reoriented herself and kicked off it in the same way a swimmer would in water. Launching herself bodily at Zant, she collided full-on with the towering stone mask that covered his entire face.
I want to see your eyes when you die.
With a crackle of energy, the strands of orange hair tied behind her head coalesced and formed a glowing clawed limb. The ghostly hand wrapped itself around Zant's helmet and made to crush it. Whomp! With a dull thud that rattled the street itself, something exploded between Zant and Midna. Once again, she collided sharply with a stone wall, and Zant was tossed backwards down the high street, skidding to a stop on the tiled road. The stone helmet on Zant's head crumbled to dust, its protection spell broken. Midna lifted herself painfully to her diminutive feet, her own helmet feeling heavy on her head for the first time in ages, and dark blood dripping in rivulets from her chin. The two looked each other in the eye for the first time in years. Zant disappeared and reappeared at the spot where Midna had been standing moments before. His arrival was punctuated by an explosion of dust and stone, tiny chips of the street slicing into the parts of her that were not covered by her dark magical garment. She launched more fireballs at him, but it was a futile gesture, as he teleported again and blew up the ground where he arrived. This time it was in front of a building, and a part of its wall was blown out violently.
Die! Die 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 die!
Zant was manic, Midna realized, and this was her only advantage. She zipped out of the way again, narrowly avoiding another materializing Zant and thudding detonation. She used her magic to pick up chunks of debris and hurl them at him, buying time as he was forced to conjure a magical shield that repelled the projectiles. She flew into the blasted open building, scanning the inside frantically. She was in an enormous, lavishly designed atrium, leading into several elegant spiral staircases. The design was outlandish, extravagant, unnecessary, and stupid. The atrium and spiral staircases were arranged around one single marble pillar in the center of the room. "Gods bless you, stupid nobles," she had time to think before she dodged another explosive teleportation and made right for the pillar and, stopping there, counted to 3. On 3, she hurled herself out of the way just as Zant appeared again right where she had been standing. The shock of his materialization shattered the gleaming floor of the atrium and fractured the pillar holding the roof up.
"Please don't kill him right away," she prayed, "let him suffer."
Midna blasted the cracked support with the strongest magical detonation she could muster. It worked, as the building had had quite enough, and the removal of its main support was the last straw. The groaning structure gave up, and the roof over their heads caved in and then collapsed, burying Midna and Zant underneath very expensive stone rubble. There was a dull roaring thud from somewhere up ahead and to their right, and a plume of smoke billowed high into the morning air. They could see the sky now, high enough above the city wall and the lower quarters that at the right angles they could look down on the spreading field surrounding the city of Hyrule.
"That was a building collapsing,"
noted Vissen.
"Our distraction, yeah. What else? Are they there already?"
Link asked. The royal complex, which he took to be their eventual destination, was still upwards from where they were, and the castle spires which rose high into the sky still seemed to stretch infinitely above them. Colin explained for him.
"They would have taken the high street. It's a direct route through all of the upper districts that runs right up to the castle itself."
His voice sounded tinny with a soldier's helmet over his head, which ensured that his face would not be recognized. The face mask on Vissen's helmet was still up.
"We're going to enter through one of the side streets. Oh, we go up this staircase here."
Link's legs were beginning to burn with the exertion of countless staircases, ladders, ramps, and hills climbed. The ascent had already taken up a good part of the day, and the sun was beginning to rise high into the sky that was all around them at this height. None of the nobility or the city guards looked suspiciously at them, which was odd because Link felt very out of place. Mostly it was the absence of his sword, with which he was so familiar that he felt awkward going anywhere without it. Ashe seemed to feel the same way, although Vissen and Colin were quite at ease among the upper levels. They came to a shining wall made of white stone that reflected the sunlight, which towered above them. Vissen and Colin saluted the guards standing duty and then spoke quietly to a bored-looking man with officer's epaulets sitting behind a military checkpoint. After a few moments, he nodded and waved them through. They were bathed in shadow on the other side of the wall. The structure must have been at least 100 meters tall. Link could see armed and armored men pacing back and forth on top of it.
"We're inside the royal complex now,"
Colin said.
"That wall rings the highest layers of the city, and there are men on guard at all times." "Even at night?"
Link asked.
"Even at night,"
Vissen affirmed.
"The gates are shut and the torches are lit, and the Nameless doesn't bother with such a tough meal. Not when it has easier and much more numerous prey down below." "So now that we're here, yeah,"
Ashe began,
"can you tell us exactly why we're here?" "Yes," said Colin, "I would like to know." "You mean, you don't know what we're doing, either?"
Link looked at Vissen accusingly. Vissen sighed and rolled his eyes. He looked quickly back and forth to ensure they weren't being watched. "We are here," he said under his breath, "to steal something." "And what is that?" asked Link. Vissen raised his hand. There was nothing in it. He closed his fist, and then opened it again. The glowing blue gossip stone was sitting in it. He clenched his fist once more and it disappeared. It was impossible for Link to tell if he had just seen magic or sleight of hand. "Something really important. Really, really important." The royal complex was filled with buildings that shone flawlessly, nobles and guards dressed impeccably, and ornate hedge sculptures and pristine gardens. They passed a reflecting pool that was fed by an ornate fountain depicting the goddess Nehru pouring the water of wisdom from her hands. Link wondered if, somewhere else in the complex, there were corresponding statues of Din and Far-Ray in their native elements.
Here we are. The Royal Library of Hyrule.
Vissen climbed the steps of the building, and Link, Ashe, and Colin followed him. The library was eerily silent, filled with the smell of books and finely polished wood. There was the dull rustle of pages being turned by researchers and scientists, and the odd muffled cough. Vissen strode imperiously past the front desk. The puzzled lady behind the desk stepped out to meet him, but Vissen held up the gossip stone, and she quickly backed away, gesturing them forward. Link leaned over to Colin.
What is that?
Shh! It was Ashe who silenced him. She seemed petrified to be anywhere near the royal complex, as if she might be discovered at any second.
But...
Shh! They passed through shelf after shelf of thick, old books until they reached the very back of the library where there were, to nobody's surprise, more stairs. Link supposed that in order to climb any higher, they would have to be inside the interconnected buildings. As to what their final destination was, he couldn't even guess. It turned out that the Royal Library of Hyrule had 4 levels, and they climbed all the way to the top. The entrance to the highest floor was watched over by a soldier flipping idly through a book that was clearly pornographic, judging by the front cover. His eyes flicked upwards from the breasts depicted on the page, to linger momentarily on Ashe's hidden beneath her blouse, up to Vissen and Colin in their uniforms.
No civilians,
he said dully.
They are escorted,
said Vissen, who proving himself quite adept at bluffing his way through guard posts.
This is Dr. Miko,
said Link, not even knowing why he was saying it. Vissen did not even blink, incorporating the facts smoothly.
Dr. Miko and his wife, who are here to conduct research on the magical artifacts in the vault.
The soldier reluctantly got up and disappeared inside the locked 4th floor of the library. He returned momentarily with an officer at his side.
You've been sent to do some research in the vault? Do you mind telling me what exactly that research is? I'm sorry,
Ashe said.
It's on behalf of Vizier's aunt. We're under orders to keep it a secret.
The officer frowned and eyed the 4 of them testily.
Well, I can't just let you in here without some sort of...
Vissen withdrew the gossip stone and held it in front of the man's face.
That's, well, I suppose, is that really? Vizier's aunt's,
said Vissen,
which you are no doubt aware means that we are granted access to his own personal room inside the vault. Well, then. Go on ahead. You'll have to.
He trailed off, took a deep breath and reluctantly admitted,
You'll have to take them up there. I am not allowed inside the vault. I understand.
Vissen saluted and led them past the 2 soldiers. The 4th floor was nearly deserted, with only soldiers and researchers in some sort of white official uniform. Vissen led them through more shelves full of books to a back wall, which slid aside to reveal a hidden staircase. They climbed the staircase and opened another door to reveal a corridor, lined on both sides by windows and suspended high above the royal complex. Looking down, Link could see men in ornate dress passing by underneath. The corridor was leading them into another building, made of stone and high enough that the top could not be seen. Once inside the stone building, they took several more flights of stairs through silent stone corridors. 3 times they passed guard posts, which Vissen bypassed by means of lies and the gossip stone.
What is this contraption?
Ashe asked. It was, as far as Link could tell, a tiny wooden room.
It's a lift,
Colin explained.
They're common inside the castle. You get in, and it takes you up or down. The whole thing works on gears and ropes.
The 4 of them stepped inside the lift, and Vissen pulled a lever in the wall. There was a clunking noise, and then they began to rise. The 4 of them stood in silence while the machine clanked and rose for what seemed like an interminable period of time. When they opened the doors and got out, they were in a spacious, circular room that was well lit and covered with plush red carpet. The Hyrule coat of arms was imprinted on it. At the side of the room opposite the lift were 6 guards, standing at attention in front of a door. This was no ordinary door. It was made of solid, apparently immovable stone, and was at least 3 times the height of the tallest guard in front of it. The stone was completely featureless save for the same royal coat of arms that graced the carpet imprinted on it at eye level. Vissen saluted and presented the gossip stone. Wordlessly, one of the soldiers took it, examined it, and then placed it in front of the coat of arms. When he let go of it, the stone hovered in midair in front of the emblem. Suddenly, the coat of arms flashed a bright blue, and in that instant there were innumerable runes and circles, impossibly complex, illuminated on the whole stone doorway. It was a magical seal, Link saw, powerful and effective. The gossip stone was apparently the key. The soldiers stepped aside as the giant stone doorway slid apart in two. They stepped inside the vault, and the stone slid shut behind them.
Amazing, Colin said, I was certain they were going to fight us. How did you get the gossip stone to work? Don't worry about it,
Vissen said.
I know a few magic tricks myself, kid. Just what is that stone?
Asked Link. Vissen tossed it to him, and he caught it. It was cold in his palm, and did not warm to the touch.
Magical amplifier. You pour the right magic in this thing, it spits it out 1,000 times stronger, it can do just about anything, if you're skilled enough to use it. Powerful mages usually use them to create unbreakable seals, that only open with the same stone that crafted the seal. Then how would we get in?
Ashe poked at the now placid rock in Link's palm.
If this wasn't the stone that made the seal. Oh, the vault seal is made to open to any gossip stone. To get into a specific vault, you would need the specific stone for that vault.
The room that they were in was perfectly round, and a flawless white. Although there was no visible source of light, the room was so bright as to blind them all momentarily. Along the perimeter of the room was a series of featureless stone doors identical to the one they had just come through.
So we're here for Xant's vault, yeah.
Ashe began examining each of the doors, although to Link they all seemed identical.
That's what you said several downstairs ago. That was just a lie,
Vissen said, as if it were obvious.
Because nobody ever gets into the vault that we're after. How do you tell the difference?
Link squinted at the door nearest him, but he couldn't discern any sort of identifying feature.
They don't expect anybody in here without powerful magic,
Colin said,
but I can tell you that one there is my dad's. I've been here before. That is Russell's gossip stone then, yeah. One of them.
Colin took it from Link and held it up to Russell's door, and it slid open to reveal a room filled with armor, books, and weaponry of all sorts. There were also several decidedly powerful-looking magical artifacts, such as canes topped with red and blue jewels that glowed ominously, or a glass bottle that appeared to contain some kind of malevolent spirit.
He has two. One he uses as a key, and another he kept in here. I took the one in here, he never uses it anyways, so it'll be while since he realizes it's missing.
Vissen, meanwhile, was circling the room and examining each of the doors in turn.
This one's Xant's. Bodies. I dunno who this guy is. Sahasrul is here, he's a big shot seer and advisor. Akana, he's part of the royal family. Komalit, he's the head of the Rito tribe. Yeah, Darunia's got one, too. And here we go. Who?
Ashe hurried over to the doorway Vissen indicated.
Who? Who is it? Princess Zelda.
Vissen turned to Colin and held out his hands.
Toss.
He caught the gossip stone Colin threw him. He held the stone up in front of the doorway and, once again, a series of intricate runes and designs appeared on the doorway. It opened, and all four of them looked eagerly inside. Zelda's vault was empty. There was a completely empty room. On the far wall was another door, with a note pinned to it. Link took the note and read it aloud.
Keep looking, Ganondorf.
Vissen plucked the paper from his hands.
But there's another door here. Maybe she put all her stuff back there. But the note says keep looking, yeah.
Ashe flipped the yellowed paper over, but there was nothing else written on it. It looked very old.
So why would she hide whatever it is just behind another door? Doesn't seem very smart. Still,
said Vissen, looking thoroughly confused.
We had better check.
He held up the gossip stone once more. Link could tell right away that something had gone wrong. For starters, the arcane blue symbols did not appear, instead an image of 3 gold triangles shone on the stone door. Link recognized it as a part of the royal crest. There was a crackling sound, and the gossip stone flashed brightly in Visen's hand.
Af!
And leapt out of it, clattering to the floor. Visen clutched his burnt hand.
What the hell is going on? The protection on the vault must be stronger than the gossip stone.
Colin beckoned to see the wound, and Visen turned his hand over to reveal a nasty burn.
It can't be.
He hissed through clenched teeth.
I was told me it would open anything. If Zelda said that herself,
Link picked up the stone.
I bet that anybody but Ganondorf wouldn't even come close to getting in there. It should have worked. Ow!
He thought back. An odd thought occurred to him.
Visen, why did you save me? When I first arrived here, you 3 showed up out of nowhere to save me from the Nameless.
Visen frowned.
What are you talking about? We're Gerudo. It's what we do. No, but nobody goes out at night. Why were you there?
He looked at Link oddly, and then down at the stone in his hand.
Because Ganondorf told us to be. He knew you would be there.
A complete stranger, rescued on the street. Midna had gone out of her way to ensure he saw the things he needed to join the Gerudo. He had become a member within a day, and a day later was now on a mission high inside the castle itself. Why? Princess Zelda is one of the 3 most powerful people in Hyrule. Ganondorf had said that. The others were himself, and whom?
Link.
Visen appeared to have come to the same realization.
Try to open the vault.
But, Ashe began, before Visen silenced her with a wave of his hand. Link stepped before the monolithic stone, and calmly raised the gossip stone high in the air. It flashed again, blindingly bright, and not blue, but a burnished, glowing gold. The 3 triangle symbol shone on the doorway, and, on the back of the hand that held the gossip stone tightly.
What is this?
Colin whispered reverently, and Ashe stared, awestruck. Visen was similarly silent, but his eyes glittered with some unreadable emotion. Link was filled with an eerie sense of purpose, although to what ends he had no idea. All he knew was that an overwhelming power flowed from him, over him, through him. He felt as though he could take on an entire army, or maybe even Zelda, or Ganondorf. The gossip stone burned with an impossible heat, but it was nothing next to the power in his clenched hand. The insignia on his skin glowed brighter and brighter, and so did the matching symbol on the doorway. At last, the glowing ceased, and when it did, the doorway vanished. It did not slide away, or lift open, but just disappeared. Visen lifted himself to his feet, and the 4 of them together stepped into the small room that had been opened to them. There was a man already inside. He had been waiting for some time, as there was the remains of a meal on a plate at his feet, and he set aside a thick book after marking his place by folding the page over. Colin moaned in what could only be described as despair. The man was dressed in armor that looked to value comfort over protection. Worn leather and weather-beaten cloth was the rule. The palms of his leather gloves were worn to a shine, and Link could tell that his hands would be calloused and rough, as well. Ashe scrabbled at her waist for a sword that wasn't there, and then swore and balled her hands into fists. She was shaking. He sighed, stood, and picked up a sword that was leaning on the empty pedestal he had been resting against. The blade was nothing special, just a simple arming sword. It was dull, and deeply grooved with nicks and scratches, although Link could tell instantly that its edge had been sharpened to a deadly point. The haft, made of wood, fit perfectly into the man's hand. This was a weapon that had seen a lot of use. Visen lowered his spear into a combat stance, handling it with the ease of an expert.
Run,
he said, without looking at them.
There'll be others, you'll have to handle them on your own. For Goddess love, run.
The man who had been waiting for them in the vault looked at Link, who was still holding the gossip stone in his hand, and smiled. It was a fatherly smile, kindly and reassuring.
"Hello,"
he said.
"My name is Russell."
Chapter end.